Let's get started. I so respect how busy everyone is, and we were recording, and I talked to 100 people today, probably literally. So everyone's busy, but they're all interested, and I'm super excited to be here with these really wonderful people that have supported this work together in the community for so long before me, and then now I get to be part of it. So the WCC Community Building Group is a group. We are parents, teachers, and community members coming together in support of our students, families, and schools within WCC USD. Our mission is to build a strong, inclusive community across the school district that protects our schools, teachers, and student programs, advocates for financial transparency and accountability, helps address funding challenges by contributing ideas, gathering accurate information, and turning out community members to board meetings and other events. We bring people together around shared facts, not sides, welcoming all perspectives and helping our community work together more effectively. I'm Sky Nelson. I'm a parent and teacher at El Cerrito High School, and my shift key is not working on my keyboard these days, so there's a few typos. And I want to emphasize part of what I'm going to share today is more transparency into the budget that we have, thanks to Madeline and some other work that we've done. And with respect and agreeing with advice I've gotten from Gabby in the union, that we're not going to try and dive into understand and argue the finances. Like it's not our role, our chosen role to try and correct finances or find fault in the finances. We're using this information just as a educational thing to educate ourselves on what the real questions are and why there's seems to be no answer sometimes and what that really means. So just want to be humble about that and emphasize that we are here to come together in our hearts with a message using data that we can take with a grain of salt. Does that work for everybody?
Hmm.
So the context for me is that tomorrow the district is going to announce their unaudited actuals. And what this does is it sets the stage for this is what they've actually spent this year, and this is what the dean and the district can now talk about in real terms when they're doing their negotiations. And my expectation is this is my memory, the number 7 million, but there's some amount of grant funds that have come through, which were I think expected but not known, and they can't count them until they're known. So they now have money at the last minute, which is part of the narrative that the union has talked about. This pattern of firing or pink slips in the spring and then money available in the fall to rehire. That's all part of a pattern that we're going to see is actually controlled by a protocol that is really important to understand, and that's why we're meeting today. So the unaudited actuals will come out. I think it's around 7 million or something in unrestricted funds. There's more restricted funds, but we can't argue about those. They're earmarked for specific purposes from the grants. But there's 7 million that I think the community is going to automatically say what I am automatically thought is great. This is a windfall. We can actually have some middle ground where we meet the community and pay money to the teachers and schools and individual sites and student learning. And this will bring some middle ground for our community to have some more conversation, right? But I'm aware that, and I actually talked with them yesterday on one, had a conversation that emphasized that the district stance is the money must go to the reserves. So there's this experience that I think we're going to have, which is like, what? My mind is blown. Like, why would we not see this as an opportunity to mend the rift? As a parent, someone on the outside doesn't understand the whole situation. That's what occurs to me. And what we're doing as a group is understanding the messaging and the reactions of parents and community members. Like, what are people thinking, and how can we help them understand or help the district understand how to message to them in a more complete way that builds trust? So I'm just thinking, what's my response and how might others be feeling? And I think people are feeling like let's invest in teachers if we have some money left over or students, or school sites or whatever it is that is needed and the priorities. We all agree on priorities, right? It's not a matter of what are the priorities, but it's what can we fund. The district stands as the money must go to reserves. So why is that? As a physicist, I look at that and say, what's going on? I don't get it. This is a slide I took from the board meeting. Unrestricted expenditures adopted are not increasing. That's good news. One-time restricted revenues will address the structural deficit within the unrestricted general fund. Restricted revenues will address the structural deficit within the unrestricted general fund. one-time restricted revenues. Use of district reserves from Fund 17 contributions will be reduced. We're using less reserves. Contribution to a 13 million contribution for 25-26. The 3% required routine restricted maintenance. I think that's the cushion at the bottom. We have to say the reserves, what they call the reserves, the union, has been increased slightly for the 25-26 school year. So I think, and this is, I'm not interpreting this directly, but I think what they're saying is we need to make sure we're solvent and looking good on paper for next year, because we're at risk of being again in not positive, but either qualified or negative stance with the county. And this is what Dr. Moses said directly to me last night. So we're sort of in the same situation we've been in. And it's disappointing to me because we just made a bunch of cuts to solve this problem. And so now we're still again in the same situation. And I thought maybe we had reached a level point and we could like take a breath and have a windfall and actually sort of build back up. But that's not the mindset or the way that it's working in the minds of the processes of the district. And I want to understand why. So why the stalemate? Well, there's this organization called Fcmat, which originated in 1991 when our district was went in close to insolvency or went insolvent. And they created rules and laws, literally laws in California State Education Code to deal with this. And these are laws, these are not, guidelines. That's the challenge here. So the short version is the district and the board are bound by these laws. And they're austerity protocols. They require a certain amount of cushion or reserves for the district, 3%. But it's sort of a moving target because it's based on current year revenues, and that changes year to year. And I'm not going to get into because I don't fully understand it, how that's when I start talking about this with people who know, we get lost in like miscommunication. So it's a challenge to meet that target. And our district and Oakland district and the one above us, Vallejo
and Inglewood.
Inglewood and LA have all been through this. We're treated differently than other districts because we've had the state come in and bail us out. Many years ago, right? This was resolved in 2012 for us, so it's been 13 years. So we're still, and basically the problem is we're now being monitored every year by this same protocol. And the law, not Dr. Moses, not President Cotton, Superintendent Cotton, not President Reck.
It's in a different
Law.
corner.
What's that, Mona?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought I was on mute.
It's okay. The law equates essentially low reserves with insolvency in a way. They're saying anytime your reserves dip below this minimum 3%, we're going to call you at risk. So there's this cushion, and which is projecting into the future that we're going to be, unsafe, saying we got to not be unsafe, and then we're projecting that we're going to go under the maximum cushion. It's like a double worry about the future, right? So we're creating this situation where we're constantly having to prove that we're not going to go bankrupt, even when we're not actually close to that. And that's maybe an arguable point, but this is the law. And so the superintendent of the county and our CBA at our district are required by law to make certain choices in certain financial situations that we are experiencing. And it makes it locked in. Like they're, in my view, they're doing their job. It's like if I go to work and I'm paid by the principal to do something and someone tells me, I want you to do it differently, I'd be like, well, I'm just doing my job. Like this is my job description. I go to work each day and this is what I do. So there's this depersonalization of the situation that I think is important for us to understand. As Madeline said very well, it's not people, it's a system. So we need to address the system, not the people. And that's really important to me when we look at this. So we're actually in conflict with Fcmat, not the district. And I qualify this statement as shadow board. Just a sense that there's this underlying rule set that people aren't really aware of. I mean, my co-teacher today on the union said to me, why should I come to this meeting? What is Fcmat and why does it affect the union? I was like, what do you mean? What is Fcmat? It's guiding everything we're doing in the negotiations. We need to understand this, or we're just thinking that the district is angry at us or mad at us or doesn't like us, and we're mad at them. We don't like them, whatever that story is. It's a set of protocols that we're following and being held to that they're upholding and we're angry about. And what I'm going to suggest today is we need to either decide, we need to have that conversation. If the community's values of supporting um, a diverse population in all the ways that we need it is not in line with the Fcmat's values of having a minimum reserves all the time and being solvent in these particular ways, having a bookkeeping record that looks a certain way. If these are not aligned, if we choose to continue to accept the protocol that we're in, we're going to continue to experience these systems that break on us and cause us problems, and that's okay. But let's make sure we're having the right conversation. Because if we don't like that, then we need to have the conversation about this set of protocols and then decide to change it or work towards change. Because if we don't work towards change and we just expect it to be different, I don't have to say what that means. That's ridiculous. Not going to work. So the core problem is that the protocols by design lock us into a cycle of 1 year contracts is the big thing. Like we need to prove that we have a 3 year projection that's solvent. It's not going to go below the minimum reserves. Not even solvent. It's still in the black. It's just above 3% for 3 years. And so if that ever goes below 3%, we get qualified status or negative status, which means we get monitored and fined, I think, and whatever the situation is. It makes our life really hard. So the DBA's or CBA, whatever the name is, the job of the accountant is to make sure that that doesn't happen every single year. If that happens, she's not doing her job, and we get penalized, and it's really hard for us. So when we ask them for certain things, right, to negotiate, I think part of the challenge, and I might be wrong, is that we're confronting their job description with our request to do it differently, and their job description is given by the law. So we got to change the law if that's what we want to do. Now, we need to keep fighting for what we want now in the short term. I think we need to find negotiations, make them work. But the long-term picture is to have this conversation about what are we changing? What is this Fcmat going to do for us, and what do we want to be different? And take that to, as I'll say, Tony Thurmond at the legislative level, and John Joya and Buffy Wicks. So by design, these protocols lock us into cycles of firing and hiring each year, 1 year contracts, substitutes that take up the slack when we can't hire people back. A lot of contracts in those regards. And it's not a mystery, it's predictable. So I get a little crazy when I hear people talk about where's the money going? Like, I'm going to show you there's a website that you can track where the money's going. I'm not saying you should do that and pretend like but it gives you a good sense of like, oh yeah, here's what's going on. It's not this other thing I was thinking or this story that I had in my head. It's predictable. And following the law as written leads to endless dilemmas. So the real choice is to accept the law's values or push for change. That's what I would like us to think about. And our response that I would like to take is to amplify the message that we're talking about here, that this is a systemic problem, not a personal problem. We can put someone else in each of these offices or on either side of the aisle, and the structure is the same. I mean, it's ironic that they talk about a structural deficit because it's caused by this protocol essentially that we've all adopted. We had to adopt. So build a coalition with the city councils, with other districts that have gone through this process and are suffering and struggling, state leaders, and the CTA, I think, would be a big ally in this. But they need someone to lead, and we're sort of taking the role of a catalyst, right? People have worked on this for years. I haven't looked at the history of this particular issue, but I think it's been attempted to change over time. So Madeline maybe can say more. But these folks are all probably in our corner, and I don't even know what our corner is. It's just let's make this work for us in a way that doesn't cause structural issues every single year for all these children and all these districts. And we just need to be a catalyst for some kind of conversation about that. And the first thing to do is to start talking about this as the topic, right? It's also about solving the current year issue. We've got to do that, but we have to also remember people are locked into their protocols, and we need to understand what those are and name them. We've got to name that happening when it happens. So at the board meetings, we say, look, we understand you have to have 3% reserves, but that's a requirement from this situation that we need to name so everyone knows. And that you have to have 3 years of that projected, and that's causing us to have to make the decision that you're not making the decision, we're forced to. So it depersonalizes the attacks of each other and makes it more about how do we deal with the structural issue together. And the path forward, in my view, is to have a transparent conversation around this. What I think this group is doing, and I want it to continue to do, is expose a full picture of the needs and the forces, right? I don't think the union is wrong. I don't think the district is wrong. I think that each of these sides has not a full picture of all the forces involved and the needs involved of the different communities. If we know what those are, we can start to understand and have compassion for why decisions are made the way they are. And that's the way that I think we can begin to have some room to negotiate and wiggle around. And we got to ask, is this the protocol we want? I think clearly it's not, right? None of us are happy with the situation as it is. I don't think the district is happy with it. They're having to fight really hard to make things work. But that's a hard thing to do, right? So we have to name that we don't want this protocol in the way that it's written anymore. And then we're going to come together and turn all of us together towards Sacramento, do something there versus in a school board here where we're facing each other, having this conversation. Turn together towards the source of the problem that I see. So organizing statewide, and that's a big step, but I think we needed to start. And I think I know a lot of folks who are on board with something much bigger than what we're doing right now in terms of solution. So the next steps I'd like to invite you to is educate yourself. This district finances portal I just got to express, I've talked to numerous people who should know about this site and they don't. And I'm like, I know more than you about the budget. I know more than you about, like, don't complain to me that you don't know what the contractors are. I've looked them up. I have a list, and I put that list here in the QR code there. You can see our portal drive where you can look at the project plan. WCC USD Consultants Research. It's just me querying the database for, like, who are these people that were paying money out of the district that aren't employees. And I got to be honest, understanding it makes me feel really good, and I'm less angry because I understand a lot of these important things we pay for. And some things I'm angry about, and it's like, but that's the way it goes. It's standard. So we just live in a world that works that way. So, and some things are, need to be fixed or addressed. So it's a whole mix of stuff, but educate yourself first. Use this portal if you're brave enough to, go in there and just look around, and don't take it as like you now know better than Dr. Moses. But be armed with some knowledge or some questions. And you can find some of the graphs I've created, which, again, grain of salt, because graphing data is always subjective and unless you really refine it well. But you can see some of the graphs I've made there that illustrate the things that the union has talked about, like why are we rehiring every year and firing in the spring? Why we're using a lot of substitutes at certain times a year, or is it at certain times a year, or is it all the time? Is it certain departments? All that is in there, and it's amazing to see it. And then we've done some research on Fcmat itself and how it operates, and reading that through I think is really valuable because it just lays out, like, this is not our fault. It's something that happened to us. We're all dealing with it. It's a great chance to not divide and be conquered, right? Come together and understand we're being put in a framework that doesn't work for us, and we need to work together to change that. So read that last document there. An important disclaimer, don't try to argue finances with folks, just understand them. So thank you so much. Use the QR code. I really encourage you to join you can join our group. You'll see the links there, but this is just a website portal just to look at the Socrata site, the research we've done, and stay in touch with our ongoing community building efforts on that site. We really need your help. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop recording, and then we'll just stay here and talk and answer questions. Does that sound good?
Yep.
Okay. 1 second.